Step 1, we'll be going over the materials that we will be using. So we'll be using a top zip that will be cutting to size later on to our desirable size. We'll be using 2 small size zips for the side pockets and the inner pockets. We also have zip tabs for the top zip. We'll be attaching it to the ends. And then we have 2 handle straps, which we'll be sewing and processing later on. And then we also have 2 straps for the overlay pockets and the slip pockets. And then we also have our hardware, the square rings and the rivet to be using. We have 2 exterior pieces, just like the way you're seeing. We already cut it to size. We did not add any stabilizer to the faux leather that we'll be using because it's quite thick. So we have 2 pieces of that. And then for the lining pieces, we have 2 main lining pieces. I already added or fused this interface into it. I ironed the interface to it, very light one. I did not add to the leather. And then we also have lining pieces for the overlay pockets and the slip pockets. So that is it for all of our materials. Step 2, assembling the exterior. So first we'll be starting with the exterior piece that has a zip on it, just the way you're seeing now. This is how we're going to be placing it. And first things first, we're going to be marking about 1/2 inch above our zip slits. Zip slits, I mean this space that we cut out. So we'll be marking 1/2 inch above it. We'll be using it later on when we are sewing and completely adding the lining. So we'll also be marking out 1/2 inch on our lining pieces, the short end of our lining piece, okay, not the long side, the short end of our lining piece. And we're going to be bending. For me, I'm going to go ahead to iron this part just so that it stays perfectly, and then I'll be adding adhesive, which is gum, because I want to place the zip. This particular method for attaching this zip might be a little bit confusing at first, but you will get it. Once you get it, you get it. It's not hard at all. You just need to, there are different ways on doing this. I'm just doing this because this one seems quite easier to understand. No matter how confusing it might look, it's actually quite easy. So you just carefully place your zip. Make sure that the bone of your zip, like where it's actually moving, there is no glue attached to it, and there's enough space that you can sew around it as well, just the way you're saying. So you just smoothing everything to perfection. And remember that we cut this according to the size of the zip that we are using. So you do not want to use a short zip when you cut a particular size. So whatever size of zip you want to use is the same size that you should cut out. Now I'm going to be applying gum again, but this time just to the sides and then the bottom side. I am not going to be adding to the top just yet. I'm just going to be adding to the sides and the bottom. Again, when you are applying your gum, please make sure that you do not touch the zip bone. Please, that is very essential. And the next, that part that I folded, that 1/2 inch I went to fold and iron, is where I am going to be placing at the bottom, right side up. Okay, when I mean right side up, I mean the part that is correct is facing up, just the way you are saying now. Over time it's going to go, you'll correct it and everything, but for now you need it right side up, just the way you are saying. You place it carefully, and then I'm going to go ahead to sew. The reason why we folded that part is because we do not want any rough edges when we open our zip. Okay, you understand more better. So now I'm going to just sew the sides, and then I'm also going to be sewing the bottom. I am not going to be sewing the top just yet. For the allowance for this one, I'm basically just using my presser foot as a guide. I'm not using the main allowances that I'm going to be using for the rest of the bag. So I'm just sewing the sides and the bottom piece. Okay, and you see when I'm sewing it, I did not fold my lining under it. I made sure that it was straight, just the way I showed you, and that's how I'm sewing it basically. So take your time. You can use your hand to just go about it. If you want, you can decide to increase your stitch length. It all depends on you. Okay, so this is how it looks. I sew the side. Now for this other side, when I'm sewing the top of it, that is when I'm going to sew the other side of it. And when I turn over, you see that it is sewn, it is still folded, so there is no rough edge. When I eventually start to open the zip, there will be no rough edge. And then when you remember the 1/2 inch mark that we marked before, I'm going to place this bottom piece on top of that 1/2 inch mark. Sometimes it might be that your zip, when you place it, it covered up that mark. You might want to, in cases like that, you might want to match the exact level that your zip is, but if you can still see your mark, it is completely fine. So you just place it carefully. Make sure that the sides are not bent. Okay, what I mean is that they are even. You are placing them straight. You are basically just folding the pocket lining into two. Okay, just make sure that it's straight, you don't have any bent edges, and then you go again to sew the top. This time you will not be sewing the bottom. If you are sewing, when you are in this part, please do not sew the bottom of the zip anymore. You just go ahead to sew the top of it, and then the other side. If you sew the bottom, you will be sewing your lining piece short. And when you get to where your zip head is, try to slide it over. If you can't slide it over, try using a zipper presser foot, which is narrower and it will not affect your zipper head. Okay, so be careful. Again, it is quite easy to make a mistake and go and sew the bottom. Okay, but just try. Just know that when you're sewing the bottom piece, you are sewing the bottom and one side of one of the sides. Then when you're sewing the top piece, you're sewing the top and then the other side of the zip. So just be very careful with it. And here we go. After doing this, we're going to be sewing the sides of our lining. So what you want to do is basically just sew the sides. Open it. Because of the gum that we added, it might be stuck somehow, but it's going to be easy to remove. And you want to sew this. You can use 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch for an allowance. It depends on you. It's just a side pocket. Okay, there's still enough space for whatever you want to put inside it. And don't forget to back stitch. Don't forget to back stitch whatever ends you are doing. And then you sew the other side. Please do not sew the main exterior piece when you are doing this. That is why you have to bend your exterior piece so that you can actually sew the sides of your lining piece perfectly. And voila, you are done with your one part of your exterior piece. You have your side zips in it. You can see how it looks. You have your side zips. You barely see any stitch from inside. You see, you have a lot of space, as much space as you want. Again, this depends on the size or the length of the zip that you are using. So it can be smaller. I don't think there's any zip smaller than this, but if there is, and that's your choice, you can go ahead to do that. Anyway, for the handles, the handle straps, I'm going to be applying glue, gum to the handle strap, because I want it. You basically using the same faux leather. I just wanted to, for the design of the handle that I want to be using for this bag, I just wanted to have the same face. So any side you turn, it's still going to be the same faux leather. Basically, I'm lining the handle strap with the same faux leather. That's basically what I'm doing. And when it's dried, you place it. So when you apply gum on this kind of thing, because we are going to eventually sew it, you just need to apply it once on both surfaces of what you want to gum together. Okay, you apply it once, you let it dry, and then you just go ahead to do it. If you have a leather roller, you can use a leather roller. Here I'm using a mallet just to make it stick properly. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it out. This is another part. If you are a beginner, I would advise that you practice cutting some cardboards in different shapes, because if you do not want to have a very rough edge with your leather or whatever material you'll be using, you need to make sure that your cutting is straight. If you can't use a sandpaper to sand it down to make it smooth, or you do not have a bench grinder, or you don't have a drill bit, please ensure that your cutting is very straight. Okay, so you have little to no work to when it comes to finishing it up. So now I am going to be sewing the leather piece. Basically, I'll just sew round. Again, I'm not using any allowance for this. I'm just sewing the edge, and I'm using my presser foot as a guide. I'm just sewing the edge all around it, both pieces. Okay, and this is because I am not directly attaching the handle piece to the bag itself. Okay, I'm still going to add my square rings, and I will be using a rivet as well. So if I was sewing the handles directly on the bag, that would be a very different ball game, but I'm not, so I'm just sewing the handles separately. Now I'm going to be attaching the square rings. Okay, so I marked, of course, you mark 1 inch, and then you attach your square rings on that 1 inch mark. Okay, and then that is basically it. We're going to be using rivets to hold the pieces together. So first, before I'm able to use the rivet, I have to make sure that it sticks, and I'm using glue, just a little bit of glue, and I'm not attaching it directly on the hardware itself, in case so the hardware can actually move. You can move it, and this is basically it. I need to make sure that you're doing it in the right order. When you're using your square rings, you see that part that has that joining there. You have to make sure that it is what is inside of your leather. You need to hide that part. You see that part that has that joining, every square ring has it, every D ring has it, so that's what you want to be inside. And then you have the fresh one without any cut on top. Now we're going to be using our rivets, and I'm basically just going to be punching holes in the middle. You can use this puncher. I use this puncher a lot, or you can use this other one. It all depends on what is easier for you to use. This one I'm using currently is quite cheaper to use, so you can see the mark I'm doing there. You can decide to use this one. I'm obviously not going to hit it very hard because of my machine, so I'm going to take it to the table and make the middle marks. Now for your rivets, this is how it is. This is the back or the bottom side of your rivets. It looks kind of longer, and then this is the top or the eye of the rivet, the one that you are going to be using to press it down. So for the bottom part, you just pass it through. The bottom part is what is going to go through the back of whatever it is that you're using your rivet for, which is the long part, and then the eye is what you're going to place on top. Make sure that it is the same size. Here I haven't pressed it, but it will not easily come off because it's actually the right size for both. Again, you pass the bottom side through the back, and then you put the eye on top, just like that. Simple. That's how you have it. So you can press it down with you can use a mallet to press it down. You can also, here I'm using a plier to press it down. Now the pin is completely pressed. It's tight now the way I did it. And then I'm going to repeat it on the other side. Next, I'll be attaching this I don't know what to call this part to. We should call it a handle tab. So just do it at the mark, and then you pass it through. Again, make sure that you are doing it at the right side, so you don't want to take the back to the front, so you always have to be checking. Just add a little bit of glue. Now this is the part that we will be sewing onto the bag, and then we are going to be starting with the exterior piece that does not have a zip. And what you want to do is that you go for your pattern piece. You look for the middle of your exterior and you go for your pattern piece, because you traced you have your tracing channels there. So you match the middle to the middle. So you have the middle of your pattern piece and then you match it to the middle of your exterior leather or faux leather, and then you just basically follow the tracing channels that you marked, so you know where to place your handles. It's basically like a guide. Now you know where to place your handles and place them properly. Okay, I'm just going to zoom in a little so you can actually see what I mean. So you just trace your place it very carefully. Please, when you are using a pen, make sure it's the one that you can easily erase, just like the way you are saying. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. Please, I'm adding just very small glue. I'm not adding so much. We're sewing and we are using a much better gum, so we are not using this glue. This glue is just to attach something temporarily. Okay, so this is not what we are using for the whole bag. And then we'll do it on the other side. This same process we're going to repeat on the other part of the exterior leather, which is the part that has the zipper on it. So again, you look for the middle of your exterior leather and then you match it to the middle of your pattern piece, basically. And then you go again with your tracing channels. After marking out your tracing channels, like I said, we are basically just repeating what we did with the other exterior side. And then you are going to place your handles again carefully. Just use a little bit of glue. Just a little bit of glue. And then you just want to hold it in place. So when you sew it, you will not have something just moving about. It gives you that firmness. It makes it stay in one position, just like the way you're saying. Next, we are going to sew the handle tabs to it. So to sew this in, it might be a little bit tricky because you have very little material to work with, but you just have to try. And when you get to that part where your needle can actually feel or your presser foot can actually feel the ring that you are using, you just have to try to use your hand to maneuver it. So it doesn't have to be so you just want it to be so a little bit closer to the ring. You don't want it to be very, very tight on it. So if this is a little bit hard for you, you can decide to use another kind of presser foot, which is the one that is for zip. Is much narrower and it's quite easy when it comes to zip heads and hardwares and all of that. So repeating it on all of it again, you just basically, when you get to that edge there, you can already feel that you are at the edge of it. You just try to use your hands to go through it. You want it to be as close as it possibly can, but not so close that it disrupts your stitch. Okay, because if it's so close and it's too tight and there's no space at all, your stitch starts bending, and we do not want that. So you just want it to be close enough but not too close.